Imagine the faint grey of dawn spreading over a Roman military camp. The night has been long and damp, the air thick with the scent of smoke, leather and cold iron. Somewhere beyond the canvas of the tent, a trumpet calls long, low, unhurried, and the stillness begins to stir. One by one, men rise from their bedrolls. Their movements are quiet, almost mechanical. A few cough softly, stretch aching limbs, or brush dust from their tunics. Another day begins. One that will look very much like the day before and the day after. For the Roman legionary, life was not filled with glory, but with repetition. He was part of something vast and organized, yet his world was small. A tent, a few companions, a list of orders to follow without question. The empire was enormous, but his life moved in measured circles. Every action had its place, every breath its rhythm. The morning ritual began with equipment. Each piece was checked carefully, helmet polished, straps tightened, sword edge tested with a thumb. The armor, logical segmentation was both ingenious and exhausting. Overlapping iron plates bound by leather hinges. It protected the body, but weighed heavily on the shoulders. Beneath it, sweat gathered quickly, even before the first step of the march. His feet slid into algae, thick-soled sandals studded with nails. Those nails bit into earth and stone alike, and their metallic click became part of the army's heartbeat. Breakfast was brief. Perhaps a piece of barley bread, hard cheese, a sip of sour wine diluted with water. There was no conversation about comfort or plans for the day. Orders were simple: march, build, and obey. Discipline held the army together more firmly than iron. Soon the legion formed its column. Imagine thousands of men moving as one body, shields slung on backs, spears upright, and sunlight flashing on metal edges. The ground trembled beneath the synchronized rhythm. They could march 20 miles, sometimes more, under a sun that bleached the sky pale and merciless. Dust clung to faces, mixed with sweat, turned to mud when rain began. Blisters opened, dried, and opened again, yet no one fell behind, at least not willingly. Punishment awaited those who did. A Roman soldier carried his world with him. On his shoulders hung a wooden yoke called force, from which dangled his pack. Nearly 30 kilograms of weight, tools for digging, cookware, spare clothing, rations, a shovel, a saw, stakes for camp defenses. When the day's march ended, his work did not. He and his comrades built their temporary home from the ground up. Each night, a new camp rose like a small city. Ditches dug, palisades erected, tents placed in perfect formation. No matter how tired, they worked until every rampart stood ready. The Roman army slept behind its own walls, safe and orderly, even in the wilderness. Between labor and obedience, there were few freedoms. A soldier could not marry while in service. He lived among men, spoke mostly of the past, of distant families, or of the years still remaining before discharge. Occasionally, merchants followed the legions, selling trinkets, fresh fruit, or wine. Small comforts that broke the monotony. But such moments were brief, like flickers of light in a long corridor of duty. Discipline was not merely encouraged, it was absolute. The Roman army's code of conduct was legendary and terrifying. Minor offenses meant extra watches or reduced rations. Greater ones could mean death. If a unit showed cowardice or mutiny, it faced decimation. Every 10th man executed by his comrades, the message was clear: fear was a tool of order. Even the smallest hesitation in battle could bring ruin to an entire cohort. Yet, within this iron framework, something human persisted. Legionaries laughed in low voices around the fire, teased new recruits, sang rough songs of home. They shared everything: wine, stories, silence. A sense of brotherhood grew, born from hardship rather than affection. It was not tender, but it was real. Each man knew that the one beside him would not flee when the enemy charged. Trust was forged through shared exhaustion. When battles came, they were swift, brutal, and rare compared to the endless waiting. The greater enemy was often boredom, weeks of guard duty, months of patrols through forests or deserts. Years of the same drills repeated until muscle and mind were one. In these stretches of emptiness, men carved dice from bone, gambled with bronze coins, told stories about women they no longer truly remembered. The campfire became their only luxury. At night, the sounds of the camp softened into a steady murmur. The wind moved through the tents, A horse snorted somewhere near the stables. The scent of oil and ash lingered for a few moments before sleep claimed them. The legionaries could almost imagine peace. Some whispered prayers to the household gods they carried. Small figurines kept in pouches or boxes. Others stared upward, following the same stars that still trace the sky tonight. Imagine lying among them, your body heavy from the day's labor. You feel the hard ground beneath your back, the faint warmth of your comrades beside you. The fire flickers low, painting shadows across the tent walls. Outside, the watch changes. Slow footsteps crunch in the dark. Time stretches. It feels endless, quiet, and oddly safe. The next day will begin the same way. The trumpet will sound. Armor will clatter. Dust will rise in golden light. Somewhere in the distance, perhaps, the faint edge of battle waits. But more often, there will only be the long march, the digging, the routine. To live as a Roman soldier was to surrender individuality to the rhythm of empire. To eat when told, sleep when allowed, march when commanded. And yet, in that surrender, there was purpose. The legionary's suffering was not meaningless to him. It was service, a kind of faith, a belief that Rome itself would remember, though history rarely recalls their names. The roads they built and the walls they raised still shape the world. As night deepens, imagine the fires of hundreds of camps glowing like stars across the continent. From Spain to Syria, from Africa to the cold rivers of Germania, each flame a heartbeat of the empire, each soldier a single breath in its great body. The sound fades now, the clink of armor, the murmur of men, and the distant rustle of wind through canvas. You are left with only the rhythm of their footsteps, steady and slow, receding into memory. From these men, weary, disciplined, anonymous, the empire drew its strength, and from them too came its exhaustion, for the empire's heartbeat was their labor, its silence their sleep. Breathe deeply once more. The fires fade to embers, the night grows cool, and as you rest, the legion marches onward, vanishing slowly into the mists of time. Imagine the endless green of ancient Germany, a land of shadow and silence. Tall oaks rise like pillars, their crowns whispering in a language older than Rome itself. The air is damp, heavy with the scent of moss and pine. Somewhere in the distance, a bird calls, sharp and lonely, before vanishing into the thick canopy above. Now picture a narrow trail winding through this forest. A line of men, horses, carts, and banners, stretching as far as the eye can see. The Roman legions are on the march again, but here, the road does not lead to glory. It leads into the heart of darkness. The man in command is Publius Quintilis Varus, a noble, refined Roman. Born to politics more than to war, he has seen the luxury of Rome's marble halls, the warmth of its baths, and the order of its streets. And now, far from that civilization, he moves through a world of mud and fog, trusting in the empire's strength to tame the wild. His soldiers number nearly 20,000. Veterans, auxiliaries, camp followers, an entire column of civilization winding through barbarian wilderness. They have marched for days under the steady patter of rain, the ground soft beneath their feet, their sandals caked in black earth. Imagine their exhaustion. The armor sticks to their skin, the wheels of the supply wagons sink into mud. The forest presses close, its sounds muffled and strange. Here Rome's order meets nature's indifference. Every step forward feels like a step into the unknown. Varus believes the tribes of Germania are subdued, loyal allies of the empire. He trusts Arminius, a young chieftain who has served Rome faithfully as an auxiliary commander. Arminius speaks Latin, wears Roman armor, and drinks Roman wine. But deep within him, something older burns. A quiet resentment, an ancient memory of freedom. To the Romans he smiles and salutes. To his own people he whispers of rebellion. As the legions move deeper into the Teutoburg Forest, the rain thickens. What was a road becomes a narrow track. The column stretches thin, vulnerable. The soldiers cannot form ranks. Their shields snag on branches, their formation breaks. Still, Varus feels no danger. The empire has faced worse terrain before. Rome has conquered mountains, deserts, and rivers. Surely this too is only another march. But the forest has been waiting, and so has Arminius. The first sounds come from nowhere. The whistle of something slicing through air, the dull thud of impact. A cry echoes, then another. Before the men can react, the trees come alive. Spear points flash between trunks, arrows hiss from above. The forest explodes into chaos. Imagine the confusion. The sound of horns, the clash of metal, the screams swallowed by rain. The Romans try to form lines, but the ground betrays them. Horses panic, carts overturn, mud grips their feet like a living thing. Visibility shrinks to mere feet. Everywhere shadows move. The enemy cannot be seen, only felt. A presence among the trees. Hours stretch like eternity. Then days. For 3 endless days, the legions are harried and broken apart. The rain never stops. Food runs low. The wounded slow the column. The road disappears entirely. What was once a disciplined army becomes a desperate procession. Imagine the slow erosion of hope. Men begin to discard armor to move faster. Officers shout orders no one can hear. At night, fires cannot be lit for fear of being seen. The forest floor becomes their graveyard. Virus rides among them, silent now. He can see the empire dissolving before his eyes. Not in a city of marble, but here, among the roots and mud, he knows that no rescue will come. The rain falls heavier, blurring the line between tears and storm water. In the end, surrounded and overwhelmed, Virus falls on his own sword. It is not an act of courage or despair, but of inevitability. A Roman commander could not live to see his legions annihilated. When dawn breaks, the forest is silent again. Only the wind moves through the trees carrying faint echoes. The clink of armor half buried in mud, the flutter of torn standards. The legions are gone. All 3. The 17th, 18th and 19th, wiped from the empire's record. Their numbers would never again be assigned to another legion. They were not simply destroyed. They were erased. Imagine the scene weeks later, when Roman scouts dared to return. The battlefield had become a haunting stillness. Broken weapons, shattered helmets and bones scattered among fallen branches. Even the crows seemed hesitant to land. A place that once echoed with Roman commands now belonged to the forest. It was as if nature itself had reclaimed what the empire had tried to take. News of the disaster reached Rome slowly, carried by trembling messengers. When Emperor Augustus heard it, he is said to have cried out, "Quintiles Virus, give me back my legions." He tore at his clothes, his composure shattered. For years he mourned the loss, not just of men but of invincibility. Rome, for all its power, had met something it could not conquer. The patience of the wild and the will of those who refused to kneel. Yet history has a way of softening even tragedy. In time, the empire learned to live with the memory of Teutoburg. The forest remained unconquered, its depths mysterious and silent, but life continued. New legions were raised, new roads were built. Rome turned its gaze elsewhere, but the wound lingered. Quiet, deep, almost spiritual. It marked the northern edge of ambition, a line drawn not by treaties but by trees. Imagine standing there centuries later. A Roman coin half buried in damp soil, its emperor's face worn smooth by time. The wind still sighs through the branches. The forest still keeps its secrets. And somewhere, beneath layers of earth, lie fragments of shields, bits of chainmail, and silent witnesses to the moment when empire met its limits. The Teutoburg Forest was not merely a battlefield. It was a reminder that even the mightiest civilization depends on balance, that arrogance has weight, and every empire, no matter how vast, walks upon the fragile ground of uncertainty. As the night deepens around our story, let the image settle in your mind, a quiet forest, mist coiling around ancient trunks, the faint sound of rain on leaves. Somewhere beneath your feet, history sleeps, patient, undisturbed. The legions are gone, but the forest remains, whispering softly to anyone who dares to listen. And so the march continues, not forward, but inward, into memory, into silence. The empire breathes, but it no longer strides here. Only the rhythm of the rain remains, and the endless green of the Teutoburg Forest. Imagine walking through a field in the quiet dawn, somewhere in Europe, far from any city, where mist still clings to the earth and the air is cool enough to taste. The ground seems ordinary at first, a meadow scattered with wildflowers and stones, but look closer, and you'll notice shapes beneath the grass, faint ridges, odd alignments, stones that once were walls, the traces of something vast, something built by hands long gone. This is where Rome once stood, and now it sleeps beneath the soil. All across Europe, from the hills of Britain to the plains of Hungary, lie the bones of forgotten Roman outposts. Some were mighty fortresses, their gates marked with eagles of bronze. Others were small watchtowers, lonely guardians along the empire's borders. Over the centuries, the walls fell, the roads crumbled, and villages grew atop them. Yet the earth remembers. When ploughs cut through these fields, bits of pottery still rise to the surface. A shard of a bowl, a fragment of tile, a rusted nail, each a whisper from the past. Imagine for a moment the life that once filled these silent ruins. The laughter of soldiers at a tavern after patrol, the hammering of blacksmiths shaping new spearheads, the murmur of merchants haggling in the marketplace, their Latin softened by distant accents, children running through dusty courtyards, chasing a wooden hoop, dogs barking, the smell of bread baking in clay ovens. For centuries these places pulsed with life, and then, one by one, they went quiet. Some were abandoned suddenly. As legions withdrew, as borders shifted, as rivers changed course, others faded slowly, their walls reused by farmers, their stones carried away to build cottages and churches. The empire's voice dimmed, replaced by the quiet rhythm of wind and time. Grass grew over parade grounds, rains washed inscriptions clean, temples became rubble, and the stories of those who lived here dissolved into silence. Archaeologists uncover these ruins carefully, layer by layer, a trench of earth, a trowel's edge, a brush against stone. Each discovery adds a new fragment to the puzzle, but never the full picture. You can hold a Roman coin, read its worn Latin inscription, but you can't hear the voice of the man who dropped it. You can uncover a bathhouse floor, its mosaic still gleaming with tiny squares of red and gold, but you'll never know the names of those who bathed there. The ruins do not speak, they merely suggest. Somewhere in northern England, on the edge of what was once the empire's frontier, stands the ghost of a fort along Hadrian's Wall. Its stones are low and moss-covered. Sheep graze between them, indifferent to history. Yet, when the wind blows from the north, you might almost hear the faint echo of marching boots. Not real, not imagined, but something between the two, a residue of memory. It is as though the earth itself hums softly with what once was. Further south, in Gaul, now France, lie the ruins of forgotten villas, their courtyards once filled with fountains and citrus trees. Their owners dined on imported wine and olives from Spain. Now only faint outlines remain, traced by archaeologists' ropes and flags. In summer, wild lavender grows through the cracks where marble once lay. The scent of it fills the air, calm, soothing, persistent, nature reclaiming what stone could not keep. And in Germany, under dense forests, buried Roman roads still lie beneath layers of soil. When satellites scan the terrain, they reveal straight lines where no path should be. The ghosts of highways built 2,000 years ago. Legions once marched there, their sandals striking rhythm into the earth. Now, only roots travel those paths, deep and slow. Following the same routes through the dark, even trees grow according to the old geometry. Some ruins whisper of mystery more than memory. In the Balkans, archaeologists found an entire Roman city, streets, baths, statues, but no record of its name. It does not appear in Roman documents, maps, or inscriptions. It is a city that Rome forgot to remember, a place built with ambition and left to fade without a story. To walk among its empty streets is to feel the weight of what time erases. The silence of history where voices once were, imagine standing amid those stones as twilight falls. The air cools, the sky deepens into blue, the shapes of walls blur into shadows, a few birds settle in the grass, their calls soft and fleeting. You can almost feel the pulse of ancient life. Not loud, but steady. It's as if the stones themselves are breathing, drawing in night air as they have for centuries. These ruins are not sad. They are patient. They do not lament their decay, nor envy the living. They simply exist, waiting for those who will notice. Each broken column, each carved stone, each forgotten ditch tells us something without words. That empires rise and fall, and yet the earth remains. That what was once grand becomes humble again. That permanence is only an illusion of time. Sometimes, When rain falls over an excavation site, puddles form in the outlines of old foundations. Water gathers where walls once stood, shimmering in the dim light. It's as though the past returns briefly, liquid, reflective, and untouchable. Then the puddles dry, and the memory fades once more into dust. There is comfort in this quiet impermanence. The Romans built for eternity, and yet eternity had other plans. Their roads endure, yes, but so does the grass that grows through their cracks. Their temples crumble, but the sky above them remains as it always was. The same pale blue, the same drifting clouds, the same wind that once carried Latin commands now moves through leaves and wildflowers. Time continues, unbothered. Imagine, now, lying down beside those ancient stones. The ground is cool, the earth firm beneath your hand. You can feel the faint warmth of the day still stored in the rocks. Above, the first stars appear. Distant, steady, silent witnesses. Some of them shone over Rome itself. Their light, travelling through ages, reaches you now, just as it once touched the helmets of the legionaries who built these walls. In this moment, the past and present meet quietly. There is no grand revelation, no sudden understanding, only a calm awareness that we too are passing through time, leaving behind fragments that future generations might find. A word carved in stone, a building's outline beneath a hill, a trace of a life once lived. And so the ruins, though silent, continue to speak in their own way, not in words but in endurance, not in memory but in presence. They remind us that history is not gone, only sleeping, beneath every field, beneath every road, beneath our very feet. Rome still murmurs softly in the language of stone. Let that image rest with you now. The quiet field, the mist, the patient ruins breathing beneath the earth. A world once filled with voices, now serene in its silence. You can almost hear it if you listen. A long exhale, gentle and endless, as the ruins that refuse to speak keep dreaming beneath the soil. Imagine the slow fall of evening over ancient Rome. The marble streets still glow faintly from the heat of the day. Shadows stretch across tiled courtyards, and the air hums with distant music. The pluck of a lyre, the soft tapping of sandals on stone. Beyond the city's noise, in the high villas of the Palatine Hill, lamps flicker to life. Oil flames shimmer behind curtains of purple silk. Tonight, an emperor dines. Step quietly through the doorway. The scent of burning myrrh drifts through the atrium. Servants move like whispers, adjusting cushions, pouring wine, arranging platters of fruit and roasted meat. The marble floor is cool beneath your feet, inlaid with tiny squares of coloured stone that catch the lamplight like water. A fountain murmurs softly in the corner. The sound of trickling, steady, rhythmic, almost like breathing. This is not a simple meal. This is theatre. A Roman banquet was an act of display, a way to remind guests of power, wealth, and divine favour. Even the arrangement of couches followed order and hierarchy. The most honoured guest reclined near the host, close enough to share words or glances. Others were placed further down according to rank. Everyone lay on their left side, propped on cushions, reaching delicately with their right hand to eat. Imagine reclining among them, the air heavy with perfume, the room dim except for the warm glow of bronze lamps. Servants bring in the first course. Perhaps oysters from the Bay of Naples, or slices of melon chilled in snow carried down from distant mountains. There is laughter, but it is practiced. Careful, soft, measured. Every gesture here has meaning. Every silence carries weight. At the centre of it all sits the emperor. Perhaps Augustus, calm and deliberate. Perhaps Nero, with a faint smile that hides something colder. His presence fills the room more surely than the perfume or the wine. All eyes drift toward him, even when he says nothing. He does not need to raise his voice. His approval or disapproval is enough to change a man's life. Now the second course arrives. Peacocks roasted whole, their feathers reattached for beauty. Fish served in elaborate sauces of honey and vinegar. Dates stuffed with almonds. The flavors are rich, the textures strange. A mixture of sweet and salt, of excess and curiosity. Roman cooks prided themselves on surprise, on novelty. To serve something ordinary was an insult. To astonish the palate was a mark of greatness, and yet amid the splendor there is something weary. Look closely at the faces of the guests. Behind the practiced smiles lies tension. Each man wonders whether his fortune will hold another day. Each woman knows that favor can turn with the wind. Here, politics and pleasure are intertwined. A toast can be a declaration, a compliment, a trap. Even as laughter fills the hall, caution hums beneath it. Quiet, constant, like the low note of a drum. Outside, the night deepens. The city's thousands of oil lamps glow like a constellation across the hills. The sounds of carriages fade into distance. And still, inside, the banquet continues. The servants bring in new dishes. Dormice rolled in poppy seeds, quail eggs, and delicate pastries filled with figs. Wine flows freely, diluted with water. Strong enough to loosen tongues, but not enough to cause collapse. Each guest drinks carefully, watching others, gauging the emperor's mood. Too sober, and one seems aloof. Too merry, and one risks ridicule. There is balance in everything, even in indulgence. As the feast progresses, musicians enter. Flutes, lyres, perhaps a soft drum. A poet recites verses praising the emperor's victories. A dancer moves gracefully among the couches, her anklets chiming faintly with each step. The air grows warmer, the scents heavier. Spiced wine, roasted meat, perfume, and candle smoke all mingling together into something dreamlike. Imagine the scene slowly blurring, colors softening, voices merging into a low hum. You can almost forget where you are, carried along by the rhythm of it all. This too was Rome, not the battlefield or the forum, but the quiet theatre of power played out over silver platters and golden goblets. At the edge of the room, a servant refills lamps, trimming wicks so the light stays steady. The emperor leans back, satisfied. He listens to the music, half smiling, his fingers tapping lightly against the armrest. Perhaps he is thinking of the next conquest, or the next law to pass. Or perhaps he is simply lost in thought, as men of power often are. Surrounded by splendor, yet oddly alone, the night wears on. Conversation turns to philosophy, to poetry, to gossip. A senator recites a clever epigram. Another praises the emperor's wisdom with too much enthusiasm. Laughter ripples softly through the room again, and again, it fades. Beyond the open windows, the faint scent of rain drifts in from the Tiber River. You can almost hear the distant murmur of the city. Vendors packing away their stalls, guards patrolling the streets, stray dogs barking somewhere near the forum. Life continues outside, indifferent to luxury, as the final course arrives. Fruits, nuts, honey cakes. The emperor raises a hand. The music stills. A slave enters, carrying a silver basin of water. Each guest dips their fingers, letting the coolness wash away the traces of the feast. It is both a gesture of cleanliness and closure. The night has reached its quiet end. Some will leave the villa whispering plans, others glancing over their shoulders in unease. A few will remember the laughter, the food, the fragrance. But beneath it all lingers a question: what does it mean to have everything? And how long can anyone keep it? As the guests depart, the lamps burn lower. The servants begin to clear the tables. The air grows cooler, calmer. The echo of music fades into stillness. You can almost imagine walking through the empty hall, past overturned goblets, scattered petals, and half-burnt candles. The grandeur remains, but now it feels fragile, almost weightless. History tells us that emperors came and went, their palaces rising and falling like waves. The marble of one banquet became the foundation of another, yet the rhythm never truly changed. Feast and famine, power and fall, silence and memory. The empire itself, like a long banquet, eventually ended with quiet. Imagine, now, that silence. The lamps extinguished, the marble floors cool once more, the fountain in the courtyard, still murmuring softly to itself, unaware that the empire it served has vanished. The moonlight touches the columns, the empty couches, the faded frescoes. There is peace here now. The peace that comes only after excess has burned itself away. And as you breathe, you can feel that calm. A deep, gentle stillness. The empire has feasted. The music has stopped. The torches have dimmed. All that remains is the soft sound of the fountain and the whisper of the wind through marble corridors. Rome dreamed of eternity, but eternity, it seems, prefers silence. And in that silence, beneath layers of dust and centuries, the banquet of the Caesars still lingers. Not in splendor, but in memory, a faint shimmer in the dark, a soft echo that drifts through time until it too fades into sleep.